In the heart of the Wild West, a shocking moment unfolds when she whispers, "Wait, I take it off," leaving the rancher completely stunned. You won't believe what happens next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. The scorching Montana sun hung low over the vast golden plains, turning the horizon into a blur of dust and heat. Jack Turner, a rugged rancher with a weathered face and calloused hands, stood by the corral, surveying his herd of cattle. The wind carried the scent of dry grass and earth, a reminder of the harsh yet honest life he led. Every day on the Turner Ranch was a battle against the elements, yet Jack had learned to respect the land and its unforgiving ways. He whistled softly to the cows, his voice blending with the faint rustle of the prairie. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow and adjusted the brim of his hat, squinting against the setting sun. Out here, in the heart of the Wild West, solitude was both a friend and a challenge. Most folks in town avoided the open plains after sundown, wary of rattlesnakes or the occasional roaming coyote. Jack, however, had spent his entire life navigating this land, understanding its rhythms and dangers better than anyone. Today had been particularly grueling. A sudden thunderstorm had swept through earlier, leaving muddy tracks and threatening his herd. He sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on his broad shoulders. Just as he was about to head toward the barn, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. At first, he thought it might be another rancher or a passing traveler, but as the figure drew closer, he realized it was a lone rider. The horse was moving steadily, kicking up a trail of dirt and grit in its wake. Jack narrowed his eyes, curious and cautious. Lone riders were rare these days, especially ones traveling without company. There was something about the way this rider approached, confident yet hesitant, that piqued his interest. The rider finally emerged from the dust, revealing a young woman dressed in a long, heavy coat, the kind that seemed more suited for a city street than the harsh Montana plains. Her hat shaded her face, but Jack could see the determined glint in her eyes. She dismounted with a practiced ease, securing her horse with a rope to the corral post. Jack instinctively stepped forward, his boots crunching on the dry soil. "Evening," he called, his voice gruff but polite. "You lost out here?" The woman looked at him, hesitation flickering across her features, before she spoke in a soft, almost whispering tone. "Excuse me, sir, I need some help." Her words carried a strange mix of vulnerability and resolve, and Jack felt an unexpected pang of curiosity. Help? Out here alone? The plains weren't forgiving, and strangers rarely asked for assistance without a reason. Still, something in her demeanor suggested honesty, and Jack found himself nodding, motioning her toward the porch of his modest ranch house. As she followed, Jack studied her closely. She moved with grace, her steps careful and deliberate, but there was an air of unease about her. Once on the porch, she placed a bundle she had carried against the railing. Jack offered her a glass of water, which she accepted with trembling hands. The silence between them was thick, punctuated only by the distant lowing of cattle and the whispering wind. He sensed a story hidden behind her eyes, one that had brought her to this isolated corner of Montana, far from the bustling towns and familiar roads. Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely above a murmur. I need to show you something. Please don't react too quickly." She hesitated, glancing down at the bundle. Jack's curiosity spiked. He had encountered many strangers in his lifetime, some harmless, some not, but there was something unusually intense about this woman. He leaned forward slightly, keeping his expression neutral. "All right," he said slowly. "Show me, but be careful. This land isn't always forgiving to mistakes." The woman took a deep breath and whispered, "Wait, I take it off." With trembling fingers, she opened her bundle and began to remove her heavy coat. Jack's eyes widened as he noticed the attire beneath. An elegant, tailored riding outfit, intricate and delicate, starkly out of place in the rugged landscape of the West. There was a quiet dignity about her, a presence that seemed both fragile and commanding at the same time. Jack's heart skipped a beat, and he realized he had never encountered anyone like her in all his years. He wanted to speak, to ask who she was and why she had come, but he held his tongue, sensing that words were unnecessary at this moment. The sun continued to sink lower, casting long shadows across the porch and highlighting the sharp lines of her outfit against the fading light. Jack could feel a strange mixture of admiration, curiosity, and caution stirring within him. This wasn't just a stranger seeking help, this was someone who carried secrets. Someone whose journey had somehow intertwined with his own quiet life on the ranch. Finally, she looked him in the eye and said with quiet determination, "I need to get across the canyon before sunset. Will you help me?" Jack hesitated, the weight of the request settling over him. Trusting a stranger was always risky, but the fire in her eyes and the subtle confidence in her stance convinced him. He nodded, gesturing toward his horse. "All right," he said firmly. "Follow me, but don't fall behind. This canyon can be dangerous if you're not careful." As they mounted their horses and began riding across the prairie, the wind whipped past them, carrying the scent of earth and wildflowers. Jack found himself stealing glances at her, intrigued and unsettled by the mixture of strength and vulnerability she displayed. He sensed that this encounter would change the routine of his life on the ranch forever. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, casting long shadows over the endless plains. In that fleeting moment, Jack Turner knew he was witnessing the beginning of a story that neither of them could yet fully understand. The canyon loomed ahead, jagged and foreboding, cutting through the Montana landscape like a wound in the earth. Jack slowed his horse, carefully guiding the stranger along the narrow, uneven trail. The wind had picked up, carrying dust and the faint scent of pine from distant ridges. Every step mattered. One misstep could send them tumbling into the chasm below. He glanced at her, noting her calm composure despite the danger. Her hands gripped the reins firmly, her eyes scanning the path ahead with sharp precision. There was an undeniable strength about her, one that seemed almost otherworldly in such a harsh environment. The sun had dipped lower, painting the canyon walls in shades of burnt orange and deep purple. Shadows stretched across the rocky terrain, highlighting its treacherous cliffs and hidden ledges. Jack's horse moved cautiously, sensing the danger in the uneven ground. He felt the tension in the air, the unspoken knowledge that nature here was unpredictable and unforgiving. The woman rode close, keeping pace effortlessly, and Jack couldn't help but admire her courage. Most people in these parts would have faltered long before reaching this point. She was a mystery, a puzzle he was suddenly compelled to solve. Jack's voice broke the silence. "Careful here. One wrong move and we could both end up hurt." He kept his tone steady, though a tight knot of concern had formed in his chest. She didn't falter. "I can handle it," she replied softly, almost defiantly. Her eyes met his briefly, and he saw the flicker of determination mingled with gratitude. Jack felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Who was this woman, and what had driven her to face such peril alone? He realized he wanted to know her story, even if it meant risking his own safety. They reached a narrow ledge, barely wide enough for their horses to pass. The canyon yawned beside them, deep and silent, threatening yet strangely beautiful. Jack's hands tightened on the reins as he guided them forward. Every rock and crevice demanded attention, and he whispered instructions to her, almost instinctively. She followed with precision, matching his careful movements, her riding skill evident in every step. The tension in Jack's shoulders eased slightly as he realized they would likely make it across. Yet the thrill of danger, the raw beauty of the landscape, and the enigma of her presence created a moment he would never forget. The wind carried whispers of the canyon's secrets, rustling the sparse trees and bending the tall grasses. Jack and his companion paused briefly to catch their breath, taking in the panorama of rugged cliffs and shadowed valleys. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting relief, and Jack noted the subtle tremor in her hands. "Thank you," she whispered, voice low, almost shy. "I wasn't sure I'd make it." Her words carried honesty, and Jack felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. It was rare for someone to face danger with such composure, yet still acknowledge the fear beneath. As they continued, Jack couldn't resist asking, "Who are you? Why come here alone?" She hesitated, glancing at him before answering, "I have reasons. Things I can't explain yet, but I promise I mean no harm." Her voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability he couldn't ignore. Jack sensed layers to her story, trials, secrets, and perhaps a past that had forced her to navigate the world carefully. Yet in that moment, she trusted him enough to follow him across one of the most dangerous parts of the canyon. Night approached swiftly, shadows deepening in the canyon's crevices. Jack led the way carefully, each step measured, each decision critical. The air grew cooler, carrying a faint chill that bit at their faces. Stars began to appear overhead, faint at first, then twinkling brilliantly in the clear Montana sky. The scene was breathtaking yet ominous, a reminder of both the beauty and the peril surrounding them. Jack glanced at her, noting the resilience etched into her features. She was extraordinary, not only for her courage, but for the quiet strength she exuded in the face of overwhelming danger. Finally, they reached a wider plateau, a temporary haven from the canyon's treacherous cliffs. Jack slowed his horse to a halt, letting the animal breathe. She dismounted gracefully, giving him a faint, enigmatic smile. "I owe you my life," she admitted quietly, the words simple yet weighty with meaning. Jack shook his head. "Just be careful," he said, trying to mask the curiosity and concern that churned inside him. This land doesn't forgive strangers lightly. Yet he knew, even as he spoke, that the encounter had changed something in both of them. She adjusted her coat and looked at him one last time, her eyes reflecting gratitude, strength, and something unspoken. "I'll be fine," she said, mounting her horse with effortless poise. Then, as if carried by the fading light, she rode off into the twilight, disappearing into the shadows of the canyon. Jack remained on the plateau, watching her silhouette merge with the horizon, a sense of awe and wonder filling him. He realized that the encounter had left an indelible mark, something rare and transformative in his otherwise predictable life. Days passed, yet the memory lingered. Her whisper, the determined gleam in her eyes, the way she had faced the canyon with quiet courage. Jack continued his work on the ranch, tending to the cattle and repairing fences, but he often found his thoughts drifting back to that moment. The West was full of surprises, some harsh, some beautiful, and she had been both. He realized that the encounter had stirred something inside him, a curiosity, a longing, and perhaps the first glimmer of change in years. In the silence of the prairie, with the wind carrying the distant calls of cattle and the rustle of tall grass, Jack Turner knew one truth. Life on the ranch would never be quite the same. The woman who had appeared out of nowhere, whispering in the fading light, had brought with her more than just a story. She had brought a spark, a reminder that even in the rugged, unforgiving West, moments of connection and courage could alter the course of one's life forever. He watched the horizon, wondering if fate would ever bring her back.